So let me go ahead and good morning, everyone. I appreciate the chance to meet with you, and I apologize for the standard beginning of the meeting where we futz around with all the technology. That probably tells you a little bit about what I do. Karen is clearly the innovator here. She and her team is the group that is pushing the technology forward. I'm so far out that you can see what's happening here. But let me see if I can have a conversation with you a little bit, and we'll see if we can actually come into some of the technology we're working on. I'm a 1978 grad, went into the Marine Corps for a while, left. I was in California and ended up going to Stanford and got a thing called a JD&B, a law degree, business degree. I've been in the Silicon Valley for the last 35 years doing technology. I had an opportunity to come back to the Naval Academy, and the idea with what we're trying to do in the Boeing Leadership Innovation Lab is bring the technology to bear that I was working with over the last 30 years to the pedagogy or to the study or to how you teach, how you absorb, how you learn things. So artificial intelligence, natural language processing, virtual reality, augmented reality. So it's pretty far out there stuff, but what we're trying to do here is deploy some of that technology into, at least right now, Loose Hall, and then I'm happy to work with others as we move forward. If you wonder what that might mean, I'll take something like natural language processing. To me, that's Alexa or those types of bots. One of the ideas we've been playing with, and again, this is just proof of concept stuff. This is not things that we're actually deploying. But what if you write a poem and then change one word on the poem? You pick the word, and once you write the poem, once you write the poem, you actually set the tone, the color, the drama, and all that kind of stuff, and then let the machine change that tone based on. If everyone play with Alexa before or tools like that. Because you know that with natural language processing, AI, it's still very, very early on, but you'd be surprised at what you get back as you actually start conversing with the machine. And the question for me, and again, we haven't pushed this that far, but I'm just as an example, what happens if you change one word? What happens if you change the position of a word? We kind of know what that means in as carbon-based units, as people, but what does the culture, what does the machine think as you make those little changes? What does that do for your students? It might give them a little bit better appreciation, a little bit quicker appreciation as to what their message is, what their meanings are based on how you actually go forward. So that's kind of the example of some of the things we're trying to do with technology integrated into what you and others are teaching. What I'd like to do, Jeff, are we going to play that video or not? It's all right if we don't. Good. Let's see if we can play it and it spools properly. What Jeff is doing here is playing a video that, if everyone knows what Pokemon Go is, it's an augmented reality tool that we've developed. We didn't develop Pokemon Go. It's kind of like Pokemon Go. So we've developed the ability for midshipmen to run around the yard, image a target, and then they can actually interact with that target. Let's see if we can actually play that, and I'll show you why that might be important. You might have to read along as we're watching it. So now you see that destroyer in augmented reality. And of course, we're doing this for midshipmen, so it has to be shooting things. And what we're taking you to, if you know what the trolley problem is, this is the classic utilitarian deontological problem. And I'll let you read. I'll let you just watch it. I'm going to ask you a question in a second. Can you hold up one finger or four fingers based on the decision you want to make? I'm not going to hold up a finger. What are you going to do? Jeff, I think you have to decide.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly. Just
okay.
Choose one or the other. You're clicking?
You want me to start playing again?
Okay. What we're doing here, folks, is we're giving the midshipmen, the students, an opportunity to interact with the environment. It could be in Bancroft Hall. It could be in any of the laboratories. It can be in any of the buildings throughout the yard. And very much like Pokemon Go, they come up with their weapon of choice, and that weapon nowadays is your Mark 1 Mod 0 iPhone or Samsung Galaxy phone or what have you. You image a target, and as you're imaging that target, it's going to interact with you. And in this case, it'll give you a little bit of Navy stuff with the destroyer or other things. But then it's going to actually load some content, and that content in this case is going to be the trolley problem, where you can make a decision based on, do you throw the switch and one person dies, or do you do nothing and 4 people die? Now, the important part of Radio Stockdale, not only do we show the content like a trolley problem or some other ethical dilemma, but we're actually logging that in the background. Once you make that decision, the machine is we know who you are, and we know that decision you make going forward. So based on that decision, we're going to branch you out to another question. And then it's a very similar question. And Jeff, don't worry about playing through it. But that next question is same scenario, but those 4 people, they're now in prison outfits. What are you going to do now? Is it going to be, sacrifice the one person or let the 4 criminals die? And we're not giving people any answers here. We're just trying to identify the biases that people might have. The next step after you make that decision, depending on what decision you make, would be, for instance, 4 criminals or 1 little girl with a stuffed animal. So you see, you'll never win. We're going to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing. And based on those decisions, I've had my philosophers in Moose Hall kind of write a little bit of the answer as to where you might be in your head as you're making these decisions to sacrifice the criminals or the child or what have you. There is no right answer here. And the whole idea, at least with this trolley problem idea, is to push the midshipmen back into the classroom so that the professors, the faculty members can actually discuss what the kids did and what they saw and the actions they took. There is an independent, you don't have to use your phone to do this. There's an instructor version of this also, such that the instructor can run through this program. What that gives you, I think, is, and God bless our midshipmen, but you got, in any 20-person class, you might have 5 that are really paying attention. You might have 5 that aren't paying attention, and then 10 in the middle that may or may not be, depending on what day it is and how they're feeling. In this scenario, each student goes through the process separately, either in the classroom or outside of the classroom. And while their answers are logged, I'm not tracking the individuals. I can kind of gross up to the classroom so I can give the faculty member an idea of what the class is thinking and which direction they're going. So at least the faculty member can be a little bit more aware of where to take the class as he or she has that discussion. Any questions on that part of the augmented reality? I'm going to hopefully give you a chance, if you want, to download. So we built an app. So all the midshipmen have an app, and they can download that app from Google Play or the Apple Store, and then you can start playing with these scenarios as you walk around the yard. Any questions on the augmented reality experience? Jeff, can we go to the website?
Yeah.
Now, what I'm going to ask Jeff to do, and then you want to scroll down, if you follow that template that I made, scroll down to the, right at the, I'm sorry, I should have told you, go up a little bit, please, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you click on the link see the download link, there we go. What I'm offering to everyone there, if you so choose, is you can go ahead and click that, Jeff. Is on your screen. This is what your typical midshipman student will see. You scroll up a little bit, and you see a QR code. So if you want, right now, you can actually, if you have an Android on the right-hand side, if you have an Apple on the left-hand side, using your phone, you can go to Google Play or the App Store, and you'll find what's called the Radio Stockdale app. All you have to do is image the image on the screen. If you do that, don't worry, I'm not tracking you, but some cool things might happen as you do that. I'll give everyone just a second. And as you're doing that, by the way, you got to have an iPhone 6. I'm targeting students who might have the latest technology. If you haven't upgraded from an iPhone 6, which is like 3.5 years ago now, you should do it. It's time to. And I'm not getting any commission here. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds if you want to download the app.
Michael, if a student doesn't have the latest technology, are there ways that they can get other ways that they can see this?
Yes, they can. They can see it using their laptop. Catherine, good question. That was a hard decision. iPhone 6 or beyond the iPhone 6 was a significant technology leap forward. So I chose to, when I was working with a contractor, cut it there. So you can use your laptop, but you're not going to run around the yard with your laptop to image things. So that's a problem. As we move forward, most of the students, I understand there's issues there, but most of the students, iPhone 6 is probably went out 5 years ago. Is anyone able to get to the Apple or the Google Play and download the app? Good.
What would I search if I can't figure out how to do the QR code because I'm an embarrassment to my generation?
What do you have, an Apple or an Android?
Apple.
Go to the App Store, the Apple Store, and then search on Radio Stockdale.
Great.
Hey.
Thank you.
Hey, Wes, I just did it. And if you go to photos, you just open up photo and then take a picture of the QR code on the left. It'll automatically frame it when you open the photo app. It'll create a little box around that thing. You snap a picture of it, and it's automatically going to direct you to the Apple Store or to the App Store where you can download it with a click of a button.
Yeah, that was much easier than I thought it'd be. Thank you.
Yeah.
And as you're doing that, Jeff, can I ask you to back up and go to back to the homepage again, the Radio Stockdale page? Mm-hmm. So as you're bringing that, does everyone have enough time to download the app if you want to? Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Jeff, if you can now go down to the dilemma page. There we go. And then click the dilemma portal. So this is a lot of information here, Jeff. Just go down to one of those icons. So as you look at the icons are the Radio Stockdale buttons, so to speak. And as you look at that, that's nothing more than a newfangled QR code. And what can happen here, if you want to take your phones out and image one of those, hopefully something's going to happen. And the whole idea here, if you look at the Navy flags, if I'm remembering right, you're gonna see a nuclear submarine on the left-hand side. That's called SSN. Tell me if anyone's getting anything. Just point your phone at that image. Good. Anyone getting anything? Good. What do you see?
I see an SSN submarine.
Cool. So the reason Jeff is seeing a nuclear submarine is, for lack of a better term, folks, eye candy. It is the way to get a student, and we have wonderful students at the Naval Academy, but it's a way to get the students engaged in this technology. They've got the phone, they've got the tablet, they've got the device, and we're kind of gamifying with this technology the introduction into the portal. Once we get them, if you can scroll down a little bit, Jeff. Let's just see what another. Go up a little bit more, please, sir. Up, right there. That's on the right hand, the one that's a little bit off screen. That's, someone image that and tell me what you see. It's kind of cool.
See a jet.
Yeah. Now, do you see a little circle in the upper hand corner, that little X? If you tap that circle and point that image on a flat surface, you'll actually get a holographic effect in your phone of an F-35 Charlie fighter jet. And you can spin it around and do things with it and all that kind of stuff. Again, this is eye candy. I'm not teaching people about an F-35, but this is the thing that draws the students into the experience. This is not something you do in a classroom, but this is the thing that hopefully if you want to assign classes, this is another incentive for a student to actually get into the experience. So all of you that have downloaded those apps, as you walk around the yard, right now it's just in Loose Hall, you'll see these icons, you'll see these signs, and those icons are going to give the student an introduction or a key into the virtual environment. And that's where we play. That virtual environment can give you an ethical dilemma. In this case, the trolley problem. We're working on what we're calling Lone Survivor, which is 4 SEALs on the top of the mountain. We're working on another scenario that basically it's the doctor problem. You have 5 people who are injured. You have 1 person who's grievously injured. Do you harvest those organs to give to the 5 people? So a whole bunch of different ethical dilemmas that not only can be presented to the student individually and independently and 24/7, but they can try different answers. They can go one way and then say, maybe I don't want to try it that way. One of the cool things about technology is you can continue to game it. It's like a flight simulator. So you can, if you mess up your landing, you can start again and come in and try to land again using different metrics, using different ideas, using different calculus. So that's what we're trying to do in this part of Radio Stockdale. You'll start seeing these icons. We launched, unfortunately, this spring, right as everyone was leaving. So, best laid plans. So that's the concept behind Radio Stockdale. Now, Radio Stockdale is a little bit bigger than this. Jeff and I are old. I hope you don't mind me telling everyone, Jeff, you and I are older radio guys from a long time ago. So the whole concept of Radio Stockdale is we built an FM radio station. And that FM radio station is in the digital environment. We built the infrastructure so that your phone is now an old style or the new style transistor radio. You can walk around with it and you can dial in to different songs, tunes, stations, channels, what have you. If you want to look at ethical and leadership things, you go to one channel. I call that country western. If you want to go through natural language processing or other types of technology, that's jazz. You can get to our podcasts from this direction also. Yes, you can do it normally, like normal people use podcasts. But what we wanted to do is use that device that most of the midshipmen have already, and let them get into this portal. And the question I'll have for all of you guys, it's a rhetorical question, is, all right, so I think we might have gotten their ears and their eyeballs. What do we do with this? What do you want to do with this? We can go jazz, country, western, pop, soul, R&B. We can send a lot of content through this channel. I've got other things I can show you, but I don't want to bog down the network here by showing you other things on the website. But there's a lot of ways. Jeff, if you can go up to that icon one more time just to show it. All of those, so there are 47 stars that represent Admiral Stockdale's class of 47. And then you see the 3 stars right next to the word radio. He's a vice admiral, 50 stars, 50 states. But really what all of those stars are is data for the machine. I can go, we can figure out how many different data points we can have there, or how many different streams we can have there. Thank you, I appreciate that. But all of that stuff is information. So we can spend as many disks as we basically want. It's up to, again, I'm not foisting this on you guys, but the way I have talked to a lot of the folks in Luce Hall, and I'll probably cite my age here. I'm Quincy Jones. You know who Quincy Jones is? I'm not Barbra Streisand. I'm not Michael Jackson. I'm not Lionel Richie. I'm not the Police or whatever. You guys are the celebrities. You guys are the artists, the artistes. What I do is, as the producer, as Quincy Jones is, if you need a saxophone player, I'll get you the saxophone player. If you need a writer, I can get you a writer. Let's figure out ways on how to put as many things through this network as we possibly can. It is a supplement. It is not meant to be the primary teaching aid. But as you're thinking about how you want to present things, this actually might be a mechanism to actually do that.
Hey, Michael, could we talk a few minutes about the podcast series that you've started, and
Sure.
Where do I access that? Under Radio Stockdale here?
Yeah, go back. Yeah, go to Radio Stockdale.
Okay.
And then down to podcast and at the bottom. So click on, I don't know. So hopefully you see the link to podcasts.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
So hopefully everyone saw, and don't click it yet, Jeff. Hopefully everyone saw a note that we put out last week that was basically the Superintendents Podcast. The concept here, and this is one of the things we started doing because of the distance. How do you get information out there? How do you get content out there that you can consume anywhere? And I've got, we've broached 1,000 listeners since we've been out. We've got guys in Poland, Belgium, Costa Rica, Australia, Japan, and most of the states. And basically that means all the midshipmen that are out, doing their things wherever they might be. And then a lot of folks who might be on ships or deployed other places. The whole concept here is, let's create, once again, another channel on Radio Stockdale that can communicate to our constituency, our students, or what have you. What you're looking at here is the portal page for what I'm calling Ethics in the Naval Warrior. The idea here is, how do you tie different concepts into ethics or leadership principles for midshipmen? And this, right after I get finished talking to you folks, I'm actually going to do a podcast with a young person who wanted to actually talk about the ethics of rugby. He believes that rugby is the beautiful sport with teamwork and beer and all that kind of stuff. His challenge is to tell me why rugby is an ethical sport. That's on him. I am just the host. And songs. You're absolutely. I am looking forward to this podcast. And as I've spoken to him, he's a little bit convincing. It seems like a pretty interesting sport. To be honest with you, I see rugby and I just see, big men and women running around without pads on. And why would you do that? But he's convinced me that there's an ethical component here. I say that because we can talk about Aristotle or Plato or Mill or whoever, but what I'm trying to do is actually present things that the students, the midshipmen, might actually have a lot more connection with. You can see things if you go to like military justice, the plague. I'm trying to make it a little bit more, Jeff, if you scroll down a little bit.
Sure.
When the Theodore Roosevelt issue came forward, we did something on speaking truth to power. How do you, as a junior officer, ethically voice your opinion laterally down and up as you might be in conflict with the powers that be. So I'm finding as many voices as I possibly can to talk about leadership, character, and ethics issues. This is a 10-minute podcast. A lot of my guests are wondering, I want to get a lot deeper. Does anyone know why I'm doing a 10-minute podcast? They're not listening 12 minutes. They're just
yeah, I was going to say span of attention.
Span of attention, absolutely, and it's hard. 10 minutes, or it's kind of 12. I've had I think the soup went 17. Well, he's the soup, but what I'm trying to do is encapsulate a lot of different ideas, and once again create a playlist so that eyeballs and ears can kind of come back and interact with a lot of the different content that is on Radio Stockdale. We are about to tackle some fairly hard issues around social justice, and we're just beginning to do a new series around the Bill of Rights and the Bill of Rights as they apply to junior officers, midshipmen, and military people.
I'm sorry. Could I jump in and maybe volunteer you or broach the subject with our group here? You're always looking for content, and the theme of this workshop is the ethics across the curriculum. What do you think about if one of our participants or if their circle of friends feels that there's an issue that would have appeal to a broader audience of putting together a podcast based upon the ethics of chemistry or the ethics of library science or something? It might not fit neatly under the ethics and the naval warrior brand, but it may very well have a broader audience within academia. Is that something that we could work on?
Absolutely. The ethics of chemistry. Do you flush the reactants down the drain because you got to run to the next class or something? And what happens to the Severn River once those chemicals get, produce a 20-pound frog down the road? So there are issues. Yes. So no, I'm very happy to talk to all of you about any of the issues, and I'd like to spread this as wide as possible, because there are ethical implications in everything you do and everything you teach. Love to do it.
So why don't we open up here for any comments or questions at this point for Michael to talk about this effort to bring new technology into the study of ethics and leadership, and how we might broaden our audience base or direct some of these messages more clearly and better toward our midshipman audience. Any thoughts?
Go ahead, Mary.
I'm just wondering why. I had no idea this was going on, and I wonder how aware other faculty members are about what we're doing, because this is fabulous.
I appreciate that, Mary. And one of the things I learned at the Valley is, when you introduce a new thing, 70% of it is the technology. The other 70% is the marketing and getting the word out, and that's what we have not done effectively. So we have work to do there.
Allison.
Thanks. Michael, congratulations. This is great. It's really wonderful. Several years ago, Elizabeth Holmes made some decision-making videos through the Stockdale Center. There's one in particular that is of a young engineer and takes him through a series of decision-making processes. It sounds like it would fit really nicely into some of the work that you were talking about beforehand. Maybe it's possible to change the medium from that film and interactive decision-making process into yours, so that you could then host that down into the Hopper Building and Rickover.
No, listen, you're absolutely right. The reason we went with graphic novels or comic book scenario is, number one, midshipmen seem to appreciate that, but number two, We can change ethnicities. We can change, I mean, instead of refilming the entire scenario, we can just change genders, ethnicities, tone, et cetera, et cetera. It's artwork in the background. So one of the things we do want to do is kind of go backwards and repurpose a lot of the things we already have as we kind of expand out. It's a lot easier doing that with this model. One of the things I do want to talk about here, and I mentioned it earlier, is the whole idea about Radio Stockdale. It's not just the content, and I know I've said this already, but it really is the analytics behind everything we are looking at. I can tell you who's not by name, because I don't want to do that, but I can tell you if on a podcast someone stops at 6 minutes into the podcast, or a lot of people are stopping at that point, then we understand perhaps that might be the inflection point where the speaker, myself or my guest, might be losing the audience. I can tell you what people are listening to over and over and over again, which actually might have some context or more meaning. So when you say Radio Stockdale, there's cool stuff coming down the pipe, and I don't want to weird anyone out here, but we're watching. Using the best technology we can just to assess what might be going on, because I hope that actually gives faculty and staff a better understanding of what they're doing and how they might change things if necessary. Does that make sense?
I just had a question about, I was just curious if you foresee pulling in midshipmen at any point for producing these podcasts. I know I had a couple conversations with one faculty in the English department who is doing like oral histories with his midshipmen, and so I was just curious if they'll be involved in the production at all of these going forward.
The answer is yes. I'm Quincy Jones. So, and again, what I mean by that is I don't want to do the podcast. I want to facilitate. I actually had a class yesterday with two people coming in to teach them how to use some of these tools. So part of our job is to create the machine such that we can actually offer it to a much wider audience. So you can very easily do this. And again, not just the podcast, but the analytics behind the podcast. Absolutely.
That's great.
Michael, could I suggest maybe that we end with a couple of minutes of one of your podcasts here?
Sure.
Any requests from the audience, or should I pick one? Okay, I pick. Why don't we do Ed Barrett's moral injury? Okay.
Cool.
Okay, we'll just listen to a couple of minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. And I'll volunteer Michael in responding to any emails or questions you may have. And I know for a fact he's always looking to engage with faculty members and broadening the scope of what he's doing at Radio Stockdale and the reach that he has to the midshipmen. So I know he'll engage you to the degree that you want to. So here we go. Moral injury with Ed Barrett and your host, Michael Sears.
Good job there, Jeff. Welcome to Ethics in the Naval Warrior. I'm your host, Michael Sears. My guest is a retired Air Force colonel who piloted over 4,000 hours in C-130s and served as a strategic planner in the Pentagon. He is the Stockdale Center's Director of Strategy and Research. Welcome, Dr. Ed Barrett.
Thank you, Michael.
Hey, Ed, it's great to have you here. We're talking about a subject that not a lot of people really know about. It's called moral injury. Can you tell us exactly what moral injury is?
Okay, there are a lot of different theories actually about what it is. Just backing up though, what it is not is PTSD. The PTSD, as most people know, is associated with symptoms such as flashbacks, avoidance, hypervigilance, and all. And what happened over time is that military clinicians and chaplains increasingly encountered cases that deviated from the PTSD criteria. So they started looking into exactly what this phenomenon was, and these cases possessed moral attributes like wrongdoing and guilt, and they required different treatment methods. So eventually, in 1994, Jonathan Shea, a psychologist, wrote this classic seminal book called Achilles in Vietnam, and he coined this term moral injury, and he really generated the discussion about this non-PTSD phenomenon. That's the genesis of the conversation about moral injury.
Now, does moral injury manifest itself in a similar way as PTSD? You know, what are the issues in terms of moral injury?
Yeah, well, that depends on how you define, back to your original question, moral injury. So many argue that you can have both PTSD and moral injury, and actually then the symptoms are different. You're going to have flashbacks if you have PTSD. Moral injury is not going to be associated with flashbacks. It's going to be associated with other symptoms. And then, as far as those symptoms go, there's just a lot of controversy ultimately about what they are. Some focus on lost trust.
All right. Well, we could probably go on here all day, Michael, but we're at the appointed hour here of 11 o'clock. Any closing comments or questions from our participants or facilitators?
Well, I'll just say structurally, so we have the last hour sort of scheduled for group work. Yes, Jeff?
Yes, that's correct.
And so I don't want people to run off. But I was going to propose if we can give Michael the last word here, but maybe we can have people take a 10-minute break and then get back into the groups they were in before and meet back here in the main room at 10 till 11:50. Does that sound right?
That sounds fine. That sounds fine. So, Michael, over to you for the closing word.
I'll be quick. I am looking for new content, more guests. Love to have you on the podcast, especially. I will tell you, it is a conversation. There's, with everyone's backgrounds here, you can probably just talk off the cuff. And what I mean by that is it's 10 minutes long. We're not getting that deep. It really, the idea is to get a student to be a little bit more interested in this subject matter. So please get in touch if there are ideas you want to discuss. We generally do 4 or 5 questions, and I'll look forward to it. Happy to do it.
Okay, well, that's the final word. So this will conclude the recorded portion of day number 3, Wednesday, of our Ethics Across the Curriculum workshop. We'll convene again on Thursday for our recorded proceedings. For the participants, we'll convene in about 7 or 8 minutes in your private work groups. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.